like to introduce this lovely woman, Amanda Simpson.
Thank you, Ashley, for that very generous introduction, and thank you, Julius and Jerry. Thank you to THE for the invitation to be here today. Thank you to our performers, their energy, their youth, their talent. Thank you, Pastor Johnson, for sharing your house with us. We appreciate the invitation. But thanks to all of you who have taken time this evening to be here to show your respect for those and to show that you care. That's very important. Because on this day, as in years past, as in cities around the world, we remember those who have lost their lives to violence because they didn't fit society's definition of gender. A list of names, abstract, faceless, but behind each name, there's a person with family and friends. I think DC knows that all too painfully. Prayers, warm thoughts, good intentions. We offer these each year. We feel shame. We ask why. Yet the list grows longer next year. Now, there's been a focus recently in the media on youths who have taken their own lives rather than live with the torment, pain, social pressure, and ridicule that they perceive as part of being gay. The media is playing this up as some new national epidemic. But we in the transgender community know that this is not new.
Right.
Transgender youth have an astonishingly high attempted suicide rate. In a recent survey, 41% of those who responded had attempted suicide at some point in their lives. And that's those who survived their attempt. That's a rate 25 times the national average. Transgender and gender nonconforming people are bullied, harassed, or assaulted in school and in society at shocking rates. I know. I was there once too. I grew up in a broken home. I had a physically and emotionally abusive stepfather. Because I didn't match someone's expectation of what they thought a boy should be or how a boy should act, I was taunted, teased, and beat up in elementary school and in high school for being different, for not fitting in. And yes, I entertained thoughts that it would be easier to end my life. But I cared too much for those I loved to put them through such an ordeal. So I'd go to sleep each night and pray that it would get better. And I knew what it was necessary to get better. So I would ask God to please let me wake up in the morning and be a girl. To externally be who I knew I eternally was. To let others know and love the real me. But I would wake up the next morning, and it didn't get better. So I would pray harder the next night, and the following night. The loneliness and self-isolation at school didn't get better. In college, they called it hazing, but sure felt the same. Well, I was smart and fit, could run really fast and jump out of second-story windows, but that seemed to only make it more of a challenge to the upperclassmen to catch me and stick my head in a toilet. But I stuck it out because I was promised a world beyond school where it got better. You see, the name-calling and taunting seemed to easily become acceptable violence. You know, playground stuff. Well, this acceptable violence is just a very thin line from seriously injuring someone, or worse. A thin line from a name appearing on a remembrance list. My life took many turns and interesting paths before one morning when I did wake up, My prayers have finally been answered. Now, we could have a theological debate on whether this was due to divine guidance or the result of creating my own reality that led me to that morning. But it did get better. To get where I am today, I survived. Fortunately, my name did not end up on a list. I survived the dark thoughts. I survived the threats of physical harm. I survived the loss of friendships. And it got better. But after everything I had to endure to get there, I knew things still had to change. I watched others before me surrender, take their lives because they thought society would never accept them. I feared for my own safety. I was determined not to let that happen anymore. So I set out with a modest goal. I wanted to change society. Okay, it wasn't anything big at first. Started with my family and my close friends. Some emotional and educational discussions, you can be sure. But then I moved on to coworkers and acquaintances. More difficult, lower success rate, but I was indeed changing hearts and minds in my corner of the world. But it wasn't enough. The circle became more difficult to expand, but I was committed to do so. Local exposure, then statewide activism, and then educational addresses to national audiences. But most often, the change was one-on-one. Interactions with a coworker, or a contractor, or a customer that didn't yet know my history, but respected my professional work. Now, I'm telling you this today because I need your help. None of us can change the world without each other. We can't just leave here after listening to a new list once again with only prayers and warm thoughts to offer. We need to take action. And I'm not talking about action through violence, but change through discussion, through communication, and emotional connection with other human beings. To stop the deaths, we must reach out to everyone and educate them about acceptance, about thinking and caring before reacting with violence. And to do that, we must eliminate the fear, eliminate the hate, the taunting, the name-calling, the hazing, the bullying. They seem so minuscule at the time when viewed individually. Oh, you can shake it off. You'll get over it. It's no big deal. Words can't hurt you. Let me tell you, words do hurt. More often than the physical wounds that can heal, words have very lasting effects, particularly when you're young and still trying to find your place in the world, still trying to come to an acceptance of internal feelings that you don't understand and don't know who it's safe to reach out to. And often, the thin line is crossed without notice. Every flood begins with a single raindrop. Now, I understand that I stand on a national stage. Earlier this year, I was ridiculed, verbally challenged, threatened, taunted, and teased by those who apparently believe that my appointment, my very existence, was an affront to all that they believe in. But it's politics, and one has to have a very thick skin to survive. But it was not politics when, for the sake of a 26-second laugh on national television, transgender panic was used in a skit about me. David Letterman crossed that thin line. I don't need him to apologize to me, but he does need to apologize to those whose names could be added to a list like today's because of his insensitivity. This joke encourages transphobia and amounts to trans bashing. Laughing about hate and discrimination is not all right and should not be dismissed. By making a joke of my gender, he implied that it's okay to tease transgender people, okay treat transgender people with less respect than others, okay to abuse transgender people. It's not acceptable. In his interview with Cher this week regarding Chaz, Letterman admitted his own ignorance. He stated his belief, which is held by many otherwise intelligent people, that transgender is extreme homosexuality. Well, it's not. It's something completely different. Heck, most of the gay community doesn't understand the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity. But there is a commonality. It's that the treatment, the harassment, the taunting, the abuse, and the violence against gays isn't always because of their sexual orientation. More often, it's because of what people see and perceive, their gender expression. It's the incongruencies between what society has deemed normal and acceptable and how we express our gender, our identity, our self, that challenges some. We all want the same thing: the right to exist, a chance to succeed, the opportunities afforded by education, access to employment, a place to live without prejudice, the glory to fall in love with whom we choose, keeping our names off a remembrance list. You know, the basics: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. It's been quite a journey for me so far. And it's gotten much better along the way. Society is changing. Gender non-conforming people are much more visible than in decades past. A quarter of the states now have transgender employment protections. We have a national hate crimes bill signed into law. Gender-variant persons have won local and statewide elections. And there have been several openly transgender persons working for the President of the United States. Yes, things are getting better, but not yet good enough. As long as there are remembrance lists, as long as people are taking their own lives rather than believing in a future for themselves, as long as bullies terrorize others, as long as prejudice is met with indifference, as long as differences are considered as negatives, as long as words are used to hurt, as long as some are welcome in all parts, as long as some are unwelcome in all parts of society, there is work to be done. Now, I can't change the world on my own. I'm asking for your help. Now, we can't change the entire world on our own. We need to solicit help. We need to reach out and find those allies, establish partnerships, emotionally invest in others, and in return, they'll better accept and support us. We have to work to put an end to the name-calling and the ridicule and the uncontrolled response that too often results in violence. We have to do this for the youth who are struggling for acceptance, for our children who shouldn't be pressured to feel ashamed of their parents, for my parents, for your parents, for our partners. So let's change the world together. Stop the violence by stopping the hate. A bit of education can go a long way. So let's not need to meet here again next year.